Powell.
Present.
Melanie Wembley.
Present.
Ray Cruz.
Commissioner Cruz is in Orlando. He may join us by phone.
Scott Morris.
I'm here.
Dave Richard.
I have not heard from Commissioner Richards, so I believe he'll be here.
Mariana Hill.
No, he's right behind you.
There it is.
Anthony Sanford.
Here.
First time I've ever gotten to use the back door.
The bat door or the back door?
Bat.
Hi, how are you?
Good.
How's it going?
Approval of the minutes of the regular meeting, January 27, 2016.
I motion that we approve the minutes. I second it.
Motion second. Questions, conversations? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Public comments. Robert Johnson.
How you doing, everyone? My name is Robert Johnson. I'm a Centennial House resident at 1630 Plum Street. I just had a couple comments about some concerns residents were having at our building. The first one is the payment and the accounting dates for the payments. Some of the payments are getting coming in late, and people are getting charged late fees, which everybody's on fixed income over there already, and the late fees aren't really working with their, with their paydays sometimes, and we're trying to figure out a way where we could, for those who get paid in the middle of the month, could their rent payment date be changed so they don't get hit with a late fee every month. We need some clarification on another subject. We need some clarification on the parking rules over there. I guess people been having problems with getting their cars towed, and fees for the towing have been kind of high and misunderstood, and the reasons why they get their cars towed. And a lot of people have been getting recently letters of termination for their lease for rent payments within the last 2 to 3 months. And they've been paid up according to them. I don't know how the accounting is being done, so that's not, anything I'm concerned about, but they're concerned about getting, I guess they don't understand, after they get this termination, what they're supposed to do. Are they just supposed to pay, or are they supposed to make a dispute letter, or are they supposed to, try to find out why the payments are getting made late? We've been told to make payments at a P.O. box, and then again, we were told to go to the bank on River Street to make the payments, and they go directly into the account, and then you go back and get a ledger from the building manager, and the payment still isn't on the ledger. So everybody's having concerns about this. Everybody living in a little private misery about, being evicted out of their apartments for whatever reason. And of course, if you're doing what you're supposed to be doing, you don't have to be concerned about that, but, if you are doing what you're supposed to be doing and you're still getting termination letters, it's a concern. And that's all I have right now.
Mr. Johnson, thank you for coming down this afternoon. So we'll look into those. As far as the payment dates, it's kind of hard for us to do them kind of different times for different people, but we can always look at how the late fees are being assessed and why. The parking issue, I think, like I said, clarification is something we should be pretty able to do fairly easily. And the issue with the bank, we haven't had, to our knowledge, any issues with the bank. So any of those residents that you've spoken to who've had those issues, have them reach out to their property manager or to Maria to kind of clean that up a little bit.
Is there an on-site manager there?
Yes.
There is an on-site manager, and I have to speak on that too. She's not in the room right now, so I'm not going to talk, directly about her. But there has been some issues about some of the things that's been going on at the building that people don't feel are fair. I know everybody's getting ready for the reactive inspection, and basically they're knocking on doors every day trying to inspect apartments whenever they get ready to, without notice. They gave out a notice on January 5th, all the way up until February 31st, that they were going to be inspecting apartments. And sometimes it's just an inconvenience not knowing when somebody's going to come and knock on your door. I'm a little old school, so I'm leaving the phone first, or give me a letter or something like that, but no, they just come knock on your door, wait till you open the door, and even stand outside your door and tell you you have to open up your door for them to come in and inspect, and I don't think that's fair.
Just a quick question, so have those concerns that you had, that you brought here today, been brought up with the property manager?
I have, I've spoken with her personally about mine, you know, other people are kind of shaky. If they have, late rent payments, they're afraid because they feel like they just gonna get evicted. So they don't wanna come and talk, or they don't wanna speak up on it, and that's been a concern too. A lot of people are afraid that they just gonna get evicted, and a lot of people don't have any other place to go. So a termination letter or a demand letter of rent, it gets people shaky and they don't wanna say anything about it because they feel like they on the, straddling the fence already.
I have a clarification on the tenant population there, like the age, is that the?
It's skewed. It used to be a senior property. It's not any longer though. So it's kind of all over the map.
Mixed.
Yeah.
Okay. And but it's still high, population of seniors or?
It's probably still skewed more towards the elderly and disabled population, but not nearly what it used to be exclusively. That now, we're just kind of moving. The next person on the waiting list goes in there.
I think it's nice like that too.
And Centennial House is on Plum Street, right?
Yes.
That's-
Yeah.
Yes.
Mr. Johnson, are you like elected, or are you just the concerned neighbor that volunteered to come down?
Well, actually, I was the president of the tenant council for 2015. I elected not to stay in tenant council for 2015. Myself got a termination letter about some late rent that I had no idea about, and according to the Aurora Housing Authority's rules, you have to be in good standing with the Aurora Housing Authority to sit on the tenant council seat, in any seat. And I was under the impression that I was in good standing, but I wasn't.
Mm-hmm.
So I taken care of whatever I was supposed to and tried to dispute it with the management and Maria, and I haven't heard anything back with it. Just like a little letter, a piece of paper stating that this is why you're late, and that could be true. I don't pay rent on time all the time. I've been unemployed since 2009, so I do what I can when I can, but I'm trying to keep up on it. So but other people have concerns about the same thing. Been there 8 years, 9 years, and they having to pay late fees every month. It's just a concern to them. And yes, they do come and knock on my door regularly about these things.
Mm-hmm.
So, I thought a few of them would be here, but since they're not, I'll be the one speaking for them.
I appreciate you coming and stepping up. Rent is important. I understand, your situation and a lot of people's situation that they haven't, been out of work or anything like that. And I think we would love to work with you, in those instances. But we have actually been hit on our scores because we haven't collected the rent like we should have. So, if you can go back and just maybe relay that, it's nothing personal or anything like that. It's just us as an authority, trying to bring our scores up or our standards up to what HUD expects of us. And that's basically, that's a lot of what's going on. So.
Very understandable. Yeah. Very understandable. My problem with that is being a little aggressive. They've been being a little aggressive.
No, I think
if you come and bring me a letter for termination or a demand letter for rent, and you knock on my door and give it to me,
sure.
and then you mail it to me, and then you certify mail it to me, that's a little aggressive.
There's ways I think we can.
Yeah, and I'd rather not people just knocking on my door without letting me know they're coming.
Sure.
And I made that request already, and I was told that this is the Aurora Housing Authority, and they can come knock on my door whenever they get ready to. That's how it was put to me.
Right.
And another situation with the parking is there's a building manager parking spot over there, and it has a handicap sign under it. One of our tenants was parked there, and the building manager called the police on the tenant and got his car towed, trumping his disability handicap.
Sure.
And then I was told that we're lucky to even have parking over there for us. So the clarification for the parking needs to be, at least put on paper so we know about it. I guess we had IPS in here before, And IPS is gone, and now Ring Machine is here, and, you know, Ring Machine's towing instead of booting, and a lot of people confused about what's going on and where they can park and what time they can park there. You know, we were told at our meeting that, front parking, visitors parking is for AID. We didn't know that. We had no idea about that. It's like 2 visitor parking spots, and AID is supposed to keep the other spots, but, you know, if we don't know it, we don't park our vehicles there, you know? And that's, I mean, it's just a little miscommunication and confusion about, you know, small things, but, you know, I just wanna get it clarified, so even if I get the information from you, I can take it back to the tenant council meeting and be like, this is what they told me. This is how it's supposed to be done, and, you know, this is how you stay out of the way of getting your car booted, towed, or whatever, you know?
Yeah, I don't, you know, we don't have all the answers today, but we can guarantee that we'll get them for you.
Okay. I appreciate that.
Do you, recommend the tenants to go talk to the property manager when they get those letters?
I do recommend that they go talk to the property manager. I understand that there's a chain of command. You know, I understand that, certain channels have to be gone through before, you know, Mr. Gregory gets involved. You know, and I understand that, but sometimes people aren't as easy to talk to, and you might not be getting the answer you wanna hear. And you might not wanna hear from that person after they say, well, this is what it's gonna be. You know, and basically that's what we've been getting since like January 5th. You know, I introduced myself to the new manager. Real nice lady. She's making some changes around the building. Great thing. It's beautiful. You know, I love it. But at the same time, it's like, let's not be too overly aggressive in making these changes, because, you know, it makes people feel a certain way about where they're living and, you know, who they have to go talk to get certain things done.
I know we have to move on, but I have another question. When are the Centennial House meetings?
We try to have them, every second Tuesday, and the building manager has attended too. You know, she's come, we have them at 4 o'clock, and 4:30, you know, like everybody's work day, they wanna get out of there. So whatever we have to talk about, we have to get it out in those 30 minutes. We try to start the meetings on time, let her know our concerns and everything like that, you know. But to be told we lucky to have parking at all, or, you know, to be told, you know, building manager parking outweighs handicap parking, it's kind of disturbing, you know, frustrating for disabled people. All right, thank you.
Sharon Ivory, public comment, Sharon Ivory, Sharon's not here. We'll move on to review of financial reports.
So for the month of January, the Housing Authority had a net loss of about $98,000. Year to date, that puts us at a profit of about $366,000. Net loss is almost entirely driven by the fact that we've been just really pushing up the REACT stuff. You'll probably see another net loss for February when those numbers come out too. We've just been really kind of working really hard on REACT, getting all the materials in. We, I think just this month, laid out another $13,000, $14,000 in materials so that the guys can have what they need to get our units and our properties in order for REACT. As far as programs, the public housing program had a $45,000 net loss. Section 8 program had a $53,000 net loss. Year to date, I think, you know, we're still doing very well. You know, like I said, we have a $366,000 net profit, which is much better than we anticipated doing. The Section 8 program particularly has a $550,000 net profit, so it's really kind of making a big dent in some of the funds that we lost in the previous year. You know, we do now, or we're starting to kind of earn some of that back just through some reductions. Some of it's just been, you know, we've had some good months where we've gotten some excess funds from HUD and because they owed us some funds from previous months, but it's been largely driven by just some cutbacks that we've been able to do internally. Are there any questions on the financial reports?
I know I ask this like every third month, so I know we break out the public housing and all the other different voucher programs separately because that's what's required through the, you know, kind of the HUD financial scorekeeping and all that stuff. and I always wonder, because if the public housing shows a loss and the other programs, you know, show profit, then ultimately how ultimately, you know, kind of does the game end for us in terms of what's better, what's worse, you know, where's the direction of the housing authority going, and how do we, because it's just, part of it is, you know, I'm just trying to understand if it's, you just look at it in the total and that's all, you know, you think that we need to look at, or if we need to look at it by section and say, well, what do we need to do to make the public housing, you know, more successful in terms of the bottom line, or at least, you know, break even or whatever.
So it's easier for me to just tell you guys to look at the top number and just, you know, go with that. But to be completely honest, you have to look at public housing in Section 8 as individual businesses within the housing authority. So look at the housing authority as the umbrella corporation. The public housing is its own business. Section 8 is its own business. There isn't a bad place to have profits. You know, you can't, you know, you always want profits. It's riskier, I guess, in terms of HUD cutbacks to have profits in the Section 8 program like we do. Public housing program, generally when you have profits, they leave them there, because Section 8 is funded on a quarterly basis. Every 3 months, HUD basically looks at what you've spent and they try and readjust their funding to you based on that. Public housing doesn't work that way. You get funded once a year. At the beginning of the year, they tell you this is your amount, and at the end of the year, if you have reserves, you just hold on to it as equity. Generally speaking, it's always preferable to have profits in the public housing program. Again, you want both of your programs to be profitable, and the risk of having funds taken from you exists in both programs. I don't know, some of you weren't on the board at that time, but in 2012, just after I got here, when we were doing the demolition here, HUD forced us to use $500,000 of our reserves to help pay for the demolition. Mm-hmm. Normally, that's not normally how you would do it. Normally, you would just use your capital fund to reimburse yourself. HUD did not allow that. They said we had an excess of funding. It's the environment we're in. You know, HUD has been accused of allowing housing authorities to stockpile money while we're not serving residents. CHA has that issue currently, where, you know, they have almost, you know, $50 million in reserves, but they're cutting back the number of families that they're serving. So HUD's under a little pressure for that very reason. So those cutbacks that we see where they take money from us is really driven by that pressure that they're feeling. So either program having what they would term too much reserves is going to result in the same thing. Mm-hmm. So like I said, I don't think there's a bad place to have reserves. And I think what we can do as an agency is be very creative with our accounting and use our fee accountants, use the expertise that we have to find the best use of the dollars regardless of program. I mean, there are ways, and Commissioner Richard and I kind of briefly talked about this, there are ways where you can take funds from Section 8 that are operational and use them for operational purposes that, I don't want to say aren't for Section 8, but that kind of blur the line a little bit. And that can potentially, though they're Section 8 funds, help the overall operation of the agency. So I think for us, it's really important that, you know, with wherever we have reserves, that we're kind of being creative and really looking to how we can best use those dollars.
Mm-hmm.
And I met with Keith yesterday, and we did like a little budget thing. He did a presentation for me, and it really helped clear a lot of stuff up for me. So I would encourage you guys to schedule time with him and go through that.
Are there any other questions?
When you take all the central office costs and you put it between Section 8 and the public housing program, is it like clear cut in terms of where all these costs go, or is it one of those things where that's an area where there's a little creativity in terms of like?
That's exactly an area where it's very gray. I mean, for example, you look at myself and my expenses. So I do work for public housing, I do work for Section 8. You can determine, depending on, you know, you can look at it from a needs base or from an hourly, you know, time frame base, but it's almost impossible to try and figure out how I spend my time exactly, because something that I do for public housing also benefits Section 8. So those people who work in those kind of areas, Carlos is another example, our finance staff, our occupancy staff, who kind of work on both ends of the fence. Those people, those expenses, the expenses related to their work and those kinds of jobs, kind of the back office support staff work, is an area where we can try and kind of be a little bit more creative with how we use the funding, and also just understanding how the rules are written. You know, one of my prouder moments of my career is that we, you know, in Fulton County, we understood how the rules impacted us and used that almost against the scoring process, and ended up being a high-performing housing authority without actually changing a lot about our financial standing as an agency. We didn't have any more money than we had when I got there. What we did was we managed the accounting better and understood how it reflected in our scores. So I think that's the kind of creativity and approach we'll want to take here with regards to the reserves. Anything else? Any questions on the list of bills?
Moving on to departmental reports.
So the Housing Authority has continued our very, very fruitful partnership with AID, with the Association for Individual Development. They have now expanded to our Maple Terrace property, so they'll also be providing on-site services there as well. And they're continuing now to look for more areas where we can kind of house them on our property as opposed to having our residents have to leave. It also allows people who may not either know about or necessarily be willing or able to drive to their offices wherever they might be to know they only really have to go downstairs to have those services. So we're really kind of excited about that continuing partnership between the two organizations. And then we talked previously about the partnership between Emmanuel House and the Housing Authority, and we're really continuing to push forward with that. Just a couple weeks ago, we met with some attorneys from Applegate, Thornton. I always get there you go. I always get the last two wrong. They are probably some of the top affordable housing development attorneys in the nation. We had an opportunity to just kind of throw our ideas around, see what kind of thoughts that their attorneys had. So we're at the point now where I think we're really starting to put together a plan and the numbers for that plan to see exactly how this project's going to kind of shake out and how it's going to look as far as a development project. We're hoping to be really putting in getting this stuff done by the end of the year.
How many units do you expect to be involved with that?
The original plan was 60 units, but we will have to determine what makes the most sense, given the financial situation. Really, once we run the numbers and see, okay, the tax credits will be worth X dollars, we're able to raise X dollars, then we'll be able to really say exactly how many units I think the project will be.
And how many units do we still need to do on our compliance?
So technically the number is 60. I have a meeting with HUD next week, no, the 6th. So it's 2 weeks. And I just have, there's a lot of confusion, gray areas about how many units we really do need to produce. The 40 from the Brenshaw deal all count. After that, everything is supposed to be driven by the needs of our waiting list. So there's a percentage of our waiting list, clearly, that is 1-bedroom, 2-bedroom units, which we developed 44 of those in the St. Charles deal. So it's always been, and there's been kind of differing opinions at HUD as far as whether or not some of those units count, whether or not none of them count. And that's part of the reason we're having the face-to-face meeting on the 6th, is so that we can just get a clear understanding of exactly, what they're expecting, because what they've written in the agreement is not what they've said on, afterwards is what they're looking for. So we just need to get some real clarification on exactly what they meant by the agreement, because we took it completely differently.
Is the Emmanuel House partnership, is it all scattered site or some of them multi-unit?
It'll probably be some multi-unit duplexes, probably 4 flats at most. We won't be doing anything concentrated. 4 flats will probably be some of the larger. There might be an apartment. If we find an apartment building that's 8 or 10 units, that still kind of makes sense, because it doesn't have to be 100% of the units in that building need to be part of this project. It can be 4 units at a higher income and 4 units that are part of this project. So, and a lot of that is, hypothetical. Once we have those numbers kind of shaken out, we can really say. But I would imagine we're not going to be doing a 20-unit project anywhere.
Is it your hope that partnership will complete the compliance after you beat them down on March 6th?
My hope, honestly, yes. I mean, at a base level, yes. My hope is that this project completely closes out the VCA and we can kind of move on, knowing that that's behind us. But the project, honestly, is a little bit more than just the VCA. I think this project is about what an affordable housing development should be. When we do our strategic plan, we talk about this agency. We always talk about what this agency should be to Aurora and what this agency should be as an affordable housing provider. And I think the partnership where we're marrying the ability for people to save money to go into home ownership or save money to send their kids to college while also having affordable housing as part of an affordable housing development, that's, again, something that's never before been done. And it really does, I think, mirror as what we've talked about is what the housing authority really should be trying to do.
Mm.
So it's yes, the goal is obviously to clear out the VCA, but I think it's a little bigger than that too.
Mm.
And on one other development item, there have been some discussions of a AHA, City of Aurora, and Community Builders project. I've had some discussions with them recently about just some of their ideas. There are a couple projects they're looking at, some in the downtown area, some not. So we're just trying to figure out if there's a project there and how far along they are with that. So if there, as news materializes on that, we'll have a little bit more for you guys probably in the next couple months.
Can I just address that one really quick? I mean, I think that there's some really good possibilities there, and you've got some basic information I see in your packets on it. Mostly because it's such an exciting project, we don't want to raise expectations, and so it's not like a top secret thing or anything. It's not something we're discussing, too broadly though, too, just because we don't want to. It's a complicated project, and we don't want to raise expectations. We are hopeful, however, that it'll be a good opportunity for the housing authority to partner and prove once again, that it is a valuable tool to the community in terms of being able not only to provide affordable housing, but to spur revitalization.
Here's your real estate question today. It says artist loft. What is that exactly? I've seen that a million times. I never knew what the
I
hell.
have no idea what that means. I'm assuming that it just means loft. Studio loft is what I assume that means.
As opposed to the clientele that'll be in it. You don't have to know how to paint to get it.
Yeah, that's part of the rent. Yeah, you gotta draw a picture.
Actually, there are examples of artist preferences. I mean, you can't discriminate and say people can't be there, but there are ways that managers can create a preference. I mean, the idea that starving artists out there is a real one, and we're trying to build an artist culture in downtown Aurora, and so having housing that's got a little bit of a preference for that it's been done in Chicago, it's been done in Minneapolis. There's some good examples of how that can actually, where affordable housing and building a culture can go together, revitalization. It's just so that's part of what makes this a cool project. Actually, it wouldn't necessarily mean that you have to be a painter or an actor or whatever, but actually being a working artist can get you, just like other things, you get preferences for seniors, people with disabilities. It's actually an allowable category that can pass fair housing. So this one would target things, target that population.
Any other questions for me? Maria?
On the top there, you have your waiting list numbers. We have 1,143 public housing applicants at this moment. For the housing choice voucher, we have 156. And for the project base, we have 292 applicants at this time. And down towards the bottom there, you have some of the events that have been going on at our different sites, which include Centennial House Melody Club hosted bingo and a dinner over there in January, as well as a Super Bowl party. There's Bible study. Maine Baptist still continuing to do some stuff over at Eastwood and Indian Trail. And Ginger Creek also involved with some of the middle school children at our family sites. Any questions?
Yeah, I have a question for you. How many staff do you oversee?
7.
Okay. And those are all property managers?
Assistant property managers, occupancy.
Okay. And is there like a standard training that you guys do yearly, or how does
We
that?
have ongoing training. I mean, with the new staff, some of it is falling on me. Coming up here soon, our newer employees are going to be attending professional, I believe it's through NMK, which is a specific specific for housing authorities that they'll be attending in April.
Thanks.
We started to create, like, I know something we talked about, we started to create a more rigid kind of training, like this is what everybody's gonna go through. Generally, directors will get one a year at one of the major conferences. New staff, for example, all the new staff, all the new property management hires that we've made, actually had to do an in-house training, like a virtual training, and they had to pass a test in order to maintain their employment. It's kind of a new thing we're doing now to make sure we're maintaining the competency levels that are required by HUD. So it's still kind of in its infancy, but it's something that we're starting to build up now.
Okay, for the Housing Choice Voucher Program, for the month of January, we had 77 research in progress. We completed 46 annual reexaminations, processed 59 interim rent adjustments. We had 12 briefings for poured-in families and families moving within our jurisdiction and VASH vouchers. We had no families that reported out. 12 lease-ups, 11 initial inspections, 53 annual inspections, 11 re-inspections. We had 4 terminations, 1 unit that was abated. We have a total now of 10 project-based vouchers with Fox Prairie Homes, 21 VASH vouchers, and 840 HCV vouchers. And then I repeated the research and in progress and completed at the bottom in case you didn't get it the first time. I don't know why they did that. Any questions?
Just question for you, Sue or Keith. So our percentages on the vouchers are really high, at least higher than they have been. But Section 8 financials continue to be real successful. Like, to me, it seemed like the higher our utilization, kind of the more break even, or so what's happening with that dynamic, and what
The Section 8 program is, like I said, it's funded quarterly, essentially. So HUD looks at how we've done in the last 3 months, and they determine how much money we're going to get for the next 3 months based on that information. So the more units we lease, the more money they give us. It's kind of a strange dynamic, but what happens in that, if they estimate, if our previous 3 months were really high, you know, we lease, like now we're leasing at 95, 99%, so they give us a lot more money, and then the following 3 months our leasing comes down. Well, they don't give us less money, we keep that money for those 3 months. That's part of what happened here, you know, and we had some higher months a while ago, and this is a new process for HUD. They estimated what we were going to need and gave us more money to a certain degree than we actually needed. The other side is when we added all of the project-based vouchers with the Franciscan Ministries project, they front-loaded a lot of money to us for administrative fees and for the HAP for those vouchers as well. So to a certain degree, it's a mixture of us adding programming and us being, you know, doing leasing more. So it's kind of two things. The trend won't be as large going forward. Next year, we're not going to see $500,000 profits on our Section 8 program. This year was just a perfect storm of us adding programming and us saving some money on our leasing too. So, or we can just add more programs.
So it doesn't. It's not like to the point where we change kind of a strategy on how we do this. It's just gonna.
No, I don't think so.
So it's react, and then more react. These last 2 months, we've probably accomplished more than we've had in quite some time. And a lot has to do with the continuation that we started last year about doing inspections and stuff we've been doing year round. I've also been real great with working with the contractors, especially adjusting with the weather, because we've had to do some concrete work, some tree trimming and stuff like that. With the weather and stuff like that, we was able to coordinate and pretty much got most of the exterior done. The contractors doing pretty much all the exterior and a lot of the common area. Guys have been working on the inside, and yes, we've been in and out of some of the units. And the residents, one of the reasons why we are doing as well as we are, the residents haven't cooperated. I know the residents better than some of the newer property managers, so I'm able to deal with them a little more. You know, I know certain people are more morning people, so we try to work with them. You know, sometimes we don't have that luxury, but I always try to, you know, if there's an issue, you know, I'll go up and talk to them and usually work something out. So as far as that goes, I really, next week is our actual inspections. I feel really good about everything coming up. We got all our inspections as far as our alarms, our elevators, our everything. So this way, when the inspector does come, we got all our paperwork outlined and stuff like that. So, other than that, still working on vacancies. Still working with city with they'll start their inspection there too, and also the water meters.
Questions for Jim?
I got just some general questions. Any word on when the Eastwood Center will be done and complete?
Carl, I guess maybe I should ask you, Carlos.
We are 4 years from the furniture and all the things that when we get all out to be at, we want to do that. But everything else like old days, the flooring, the cabinets. So, as long as it's.
I was there last week, and I mean the center, it looks great. It really does. I think the contractors, the way it's been laid out, everybody's done an excellent job there. It's still, like I said, we got started, and then React started, and then we just kind of left it there. So once we get through React, we can get back to normal operations, and that'll be one of the first things we get finished.
Okay, so not a projected date yet, like with the,
I-
so it can be like reopened.
I only hesitate to give an exact date right this minute because I just don't know. But I would say end of March. I think we can have it ready.
The question that I get I got from a tenant the other day. She was like, when are the managers in the office? 'Cause I need a sticker for my car, and I'm like, I don't know. So my question is, one, can a letter go out as soon as possible stating who the new property managers are, their office hours, best way to contact them, email, everything that we need. And I don't know if did every location get like switch either property managers or whatever?
Sure. So what happened, we have talked a lot about customer service. So what we did, before we only had 2 property managers who covered all 5 sites, and really none of the sites had everyday coverage. Maple Terrace got a lot of attention. Centennial House tended to get a lot of attention because they're bigger properties. Eastwood had property managers like twice a week. What we've done, we've actually hired 5 property managers. Now, some of them are in training, so they're still working in groups, but eventually, probably in the next month or 2, every site will have 5-day-a-week coverage, which is why we went through that process. So I apologize if things are a little confusing now, just because they're all, we have Victoria and Candace at Eastwood, and they're still learning. They're both brand new to the agency, so they're still learning about how things work. But that letter, that's something that we can definitely get out to everyone, so just so you guys know who's there and when they're there. But like I said, you can expect that within a reasonable amount of time, there'll be someone there every day.
Because all I did tell the residents, like, call me in office.
Sure.
I don't know either. So yeah, if we could, like a formal introduction via paper,
Sure, absolutely.
that would be great. And then, so right now, there's no set office hours right now?
They've been over there, they're there Tuesdays and Thursdays, if I'm not mistaken. As Mr. Gregory said, it's Victoria and Candace. Because Centennial that's the other location that they're currently managing, that's currently where they're stationed. The other 2 property managers, Stephanie and Alvia's been on board a little bit longer. They're actually handling Maple Terrace and Southwind, and then we have another person, Etney Santana, who is over Indian Trail and all of our scattered sites. So Victoria, you can definitely reach her over at Centennial. We'll make sure that we get something out. Again, like Mr. Gregory said, because they're so new to the agency and making sure that everyone's on board and accustomed to everything, we will get them out actually before April even hits. They're gonna have their set dates and times that they're gonna be there, and make sure that everyone's aware of that.
Yeah, but even just saying, like you just said, that she's mainly at Centennial House, that's great to know. So I can pass to the residents, like, she's not in this office, but I know where she is. So that's good to know if we can get something. And then also what's happening and how has the online payment system been going for the paying of rent? And is it widespread now? That's,
We've kind of let it grow word of mouth, and we still haven't made any major announcement regarding it. It has grown. Some, we started out, we were just getting one payment and one little lonely payment, but now we're doing about $4,000 a month in payments just from that portal. It seems to be working well. I haven't heard any complaints. The bank hasn't forwarded anything to me that caused me any alarm or concern. I think there was one client who needed, I guess they made the payment and they also wrote a check, so there was some confusion somehow how that ended up happening. But other than that, it so far so good. Obviously it's just like any other payment system. I'm sure even when we roll it out, it will have its difficulties. But I think so far it's worked very well. It's a little easier too because on our end, the payments when they come in, when the bank gives us a file from everybody mailing it in, sometimes the bank can't read the checks. Sometimes the bank puts things on. They make mistakes. They fix them, of course, but this way, when it's the online payment, the credit card, the name, the address, all of that information is there for us. And it's, we don't have to really search when we know exactly who it is. If the bank, for some reason, couldn't figure it out, we know exactly who that payment's for because that information is all part of the file that we get. So again, it's been working well, and I think we're almost ready to roll it out. We just Jimmy stole all my attention, so we're focusing on it. But we will be getting it out probably, late spring, early summer, where we do a big announcement for everybody.
Just to add to that, and it kind of will answer Mr. Johnson's comment about where the payment should be going. We encourage all of our tenants to send it to the P.O. box. Otherwise, if they wanted to make the payment directly in person, we request that they be taken directly to the branch that's on River Street because the other branches do not have our file information. So if a tenant does take a payment to a different branch other than that River Street one, they don't know what to do with it because they don't have our information, they don't have the tenant listing or anything like that. So that other branch then has to turn around, figure out what to do with it, send it to this one. So it takes longer too. So if you can pass that information along, please do.
Which in turn incurs a late fee.
Well, if we can figure out where the payment ended, I mean, if there was a late fee and there was some sort of confusion there, we would waive any late fees. Unfortunately though, the system does automatically, after that 8th of the month, so let's say on the 9th or 10th month, once we know we have all those bank files in, the system automatically will generate that 14-day notice to go out to everyone. It then goes to the property managers to serve to all the tenants. Anyone that owes anything over $1. And that notice does have the instructions on there as well and what they should do. If for some reason we don't hear from them,
Victoria did a pretty good job in letting us know where to make the payments. But we are encouraged to go to 37 South River Street to make the payments.
Either that or the online for those that have access to going online, they can also do the online now.
That was just put in the flyer for all residents at Centennial House. So keep that in mind.
Okay.
I think that's it.
Mr. Chairman.
Old business, discussion of fiscal 2017 operating budget.
So we started this kind of discussion. I want to put this out here so we have the discussion. We have a brief presentation if the board wants to sit through that. I know, Commissioner Richard, for example, has already kind of sat through the presentation. So it's really up to you guys if you want to discuss this further or how you guys want to handle the budget discussion.
What is it, a video
It's
presentation?
a little PowerPoint kind of thing.
It's fine.
Yeah.
Is it about a minute long?
Yeah, I can make it. Don't worry. I can definitely make it shorter than it is. That I can do. Mouse will work.
What kind of action, are we looking to take action today?
It is on the agenda only if the board wants to take that action. I have to put it on there if you want to make a vote on it. If you do not and you want to table it for a month, that's absolutely fine. That's an option that the board has.
You got the resolution?
Yes.
Yeah.
Can I put this thing into? Mouse is making me look bad. Right, so what we're talking about is the fiscal year 2017 operating budget. If you all remember, because of the way that our year end works, our fiscal year runs through March. It starts April 1st, but it ends in March of 2017. So that's why it's called the 2017 operating budget. So overall, we'll talk about this in kind of three sections: the overall budget, the public housing budget, and the Section 8 budget. We'll also touch on the central office cost center, which is the allocation of expenses from our support staff. So it's overall, it's almost exactly a $17 million budget. I think it's like $17.018 million. Basically, all of the funding is at the same levels that we had revenue-wise from 2016. So basically what HUD did, they are working with fewer funds in the coming years, so they have actually not given us any inflation factor, which normally we get about 1 to 2%, sometimes even more, of a just cost of living inflationary increase. This year there was no increase. Actually, the public housing budgets, the operating subsidy is working on 99% of last year's numbers. So we're in some cases even dealing with less money. Even though, in spite of that, though, we've been able to cut some costs, make some changes, so that we are still projecting a $230,000 net profit, which is much larger than we projected in previous years. In previous years, we pretty much run break even. So this is kind of a big change for us, and kind of unfortunately puts a little pressure on me to perform. But we do believe that we can come through with a sizable profit that we can then use to kind of shore up our reserves a little bit. And again, all the things that we planted in the strategic plan, all of our initiatives are continued under this budget. We're not cutting any of our major programs out. We're going to continue to kind of push forward with those. So if you look at the overall budget in detail, $17.018 million is our revenue that comes from our public housing program with rent, operating subsidy, and capital fund, and it comes from our Section 8 program with administrative fee and the money that we pay out, which is called HAP, housing assistance payment, which is the money that goes out to our landlords. When you look at that, it kind of breaks down kind of right along those lines of the major categories that you'll see every month in the financials: the administrative expense, utilities, maintenance, general. And again, HAP expense is the rent money that we pay out to landlords on our Section 8 program, which is obviously, more than half of our budget is just money that comes in on one end and most of it all goes back out. As you'll see, utilities seems probably it's a smaller number of all the other numbers there, but it's mainly because it only relates to the public housing units we have. So it's $656,000 in utilities, and we've done a lot over the last few years to cut down those costs. If you recall, I think 2012's number was closer to $800,000, $900,000. We've made a lot of system improvements that bring those numbers down. So when you start to look at this, this is an easy way to look at the overall agency. So Commissioner Vorsh, you had that question of how to look at the agency. The overall agency is this setup. It's the $17 million with the $230,000 net profit. When you look at the agency from a programmatic, those side businesses, we're going to talk about those next. So the public housing program is roughly a $4.4 million program for 2017. This covers all of our maintenance costs, all the unit management costs. So the property managers, Jimmy and his crew, all the maintenance staff, they're all included in the public housing budget. We're projecting to get about $945,000 in rent. Even though for the first 2 months this year, we've done a little bit better than that. So it's actually a good sign that our residents are actually doing a little better, that we're getting higher rents. We've actually pulled in what would annualize out to about $1 million a year in rent if we keep on at our current pace, which is really good considering how important collecting rent is for us. Not inclusive of the cost allocations from the main office, from our support staff. That program is looking at a $1.2 million profit. Now, let me be clear, we won't make $1.2 million in that program. What's going to happen, and you'll see later on, is a third budget group called the Central Office Cost Center. That's all of myself, anybody basically in this office, anything that, we were talking about those gray areas, anybody who can be kind of allocated out the two sides, they'll take away from that budget. So we budgeted at $1.2 million, but know that cost center is going to come into play into that number some. So when we look at the detail there, like we said, $4.4 million in revenue. Admin expenses are about $462,000. If you notice, all of the utilities expense is budgeted in the public housing program. The reason for that is because all of the locations that we own are considered part of the public housing program. Even this building is part of one of our public housing buildings, so to speak. Because of that, we're able to put all of the utilities costs, even the ones that theoretically Section 8 and their staff are generating in this building, into the public housing program. The reason that's useful is because one of the few things that HUD funds at 100% every year is our utilities. So what we're able to do is actually get a little bit more money than we naturally would by funneling some of the overall utilities costs into the public housing program. Maintenance expense is probably the largest and should probably be the largest expense item on the public housing budget. That's the entire maintenance team, Jimmy's team. It's all of the contractors that we use, all the supplies that we purchase. Obviously the tier unit work that we do in there, all of the upgrades that we do generally fall somewhere in the maintenance area. So that's why that's such a large number. But it's actually around the same number we had last year. I think we had $1.5 million last year, or 1.3 this year. That changes mostly because we've been able to shift, because of the way we've done things now, a little bit more work is going to the maintenance staff, and then some of our contract costs. Again, Carlos is always threatening the guys with crowbars, so the prices are coming down on some of the contracts in there. General expense is kind of a catch-all and includes our pension plan, some of our insurance for the properties. So again, 1.2 million is before the allocation profit in that program. And feel free, by the way, to stop me anywhere here. So Housing Choice Voucher Program, which is also known as the Section 8 program, has two main areas, and it's broken out this way to help everybody kind of see where we're spending the money. There's the administrative side, which is funded by the administrative fee that we receive, and then there's the HAP, which again is the housing assistance payment, which is the rent that goes out to the landlords, which we budget that at a zero. We always budget that every dollar that comes in is going to go back out. That's usually not the case, but we always budget that way to kind of protect ourselves and not be predicting some profit in that program that's not going to materialize later. We're looking at the admin budget of roughly $1.2 million, and then a HAP budget of roughly $11.3 million. So on the admin side, when we look at some of the breakdowns, we notice there's no utilities, no maintenance. Obviously, the Section 8 program is an administrative-only program. They're not out in the field. They're not really doing that kind of work that would generate a maintenance expense. The admin expense covers all the staffing, all the office costs for that staff or for that program. So it seems, if you look at it compared to the public housing program, the administrative expense percentage seems a little high. It's almost 50% of that program. However, you have to remember that that's all that happens in the Section 8 program. On our end is administration. We don't really do much else. General expense just covers some of the insurance costs that get allocated to that program. So, yes.
Sorry, do you benchmark yourself against other housing authorities of similar size to see like how some of these things stack up, where it says how much maintenance per unit or how much stuff like that?
We do, but I have to say that it's a little difficult, mainly because of what we've gotten ourselves into. We've taken on projects and we've taken on kind of some. Our strategic plan lays out things that nobody else is doing.
Yes, there's costs that we have
that nobody else is going to have. Now that doesn't mean we don't look at those numbers. We do kind of look just to see where we stand with other agencies. And HUD sometimes they don't really give us a percentage that we should be at. But we can always, we try to look at maybe in our public housing program, we'll look at the capital fund, because in the capital fund, HUD does lay out 10% for admin, this percentage for facilities, different things. So we can use that to kind of benchmark where we are. And in our public housing program, we match up pretty well. Section 8, actually, we're pretty lean on our Section 8 program. I've seen agencies run higher than that. Obviously, I've also seen some run lower. So I think, though, again, we're kind of driven by where we are. And where we'd like to be. Because I always hesitate, because you look at like a CHA, well, they're going to be at 80% of of their funds are going to admin, just because they're so large and they're so top heavy. You might look at a Danville Housing Authority, which is tiny, and they'll be 5%, just because they only have one person doing all of this work. So it's really driven just kind of by who we are as an agency, unfortunately. So we mentioned the Central Office Cost Center a moment ago, and I can't really stress enough It's essentially everything else. You know, it's pretty much everybody in this office. It's anything that touches both programs at some level. Perfect example, like I said, myself, I do work, if I make a decision as policy, it's policy for public housing and Section 8. I'm part of the central office cost center. This building is theoretically part of the central office cost center. The idea is that we allocate the funds out based on, one, how they're being used, you know, how the expenses here are being utilized, but also, as we talked a little bit earlier, Commissioner Boris, how they fit into our overall strategies. If there's something we're trying to accomplish, the central office cost center is how we kind of move the money around to kind of meet our goals. It doesn't generate any revenue. Obviously, you know, that's all programmatic. Everything, like I said, everything here gets kind of pushed out to the sites accordingly. So when you look here, and again, it's another admin-heavy program, so $1.1 million for administrative expenses in the central office, and the only other expense there is your general expense, which is about $500,000, which is the majority of the insurance. We capture all of the pension plan in there, the retirement plan, and we also capture some just kind of general cushion expense. I don't think there's actually much of that in there this year, though. So it costs $1.6 million basically for everything else. So all of our consultants, when we talk about what makes up that, it's the consultants, it's any of these initiatives that we're doing, the internship program, the tiered housing management side, a lot of those things fall under the central office and get distributed out to the programs depending on how they're utilized. You look like you have a question.
Well, yeah, and then that loss is, portion of it is pushed into.
In the public housing and in
portion
section.
into the section.
Yes.
Part of the reason why I always ask is like, is it to our benefit to push more to the Section 8 and less to public housing?
It can be, yeah, absolutely. And we did actually make a slight shift. If you remember at the beginning of the year, the loss for public housing was a lot more. We've really eaten at that because of the way we've done some reallocations. Our fee accounts look at the allocation quarterly. So it's not like we set the allocation when we do the budget and it sticks the whole year. They take a look at it every quarter and say, okay, we can shift some expenses. If I tell them, hey, we're trying to, you know, find some ways to cut costs over here, can you shift some expenses? They can, you know, they'll go through the math and figure out how we can move some things around. So, you know, it's always, like you said, when we start looking at how we want to move things, just know that on a quarterly basis, we can make some adjustments to how we'd like to see expenses be kind of played out.
The sub-pay section to, like, how far off of 50/50 that is, or, like, is there a red flag raised at a certain point?
If it looks egregious, it's going to raise, you know, our auditors come in and they have to agree to our allocation plan. So as long as our auditors agree to our accountant's allocation plan, then HUD's not going to have a problem with that. And our auditors do a true review of the allocation plan. They come in, they look at timesheets, they come in, they look at how we've allocated and support as to why we did that. So as long as we have that and they agree, then HUD's going to be okay with it. That's the presentation. It is short. So, any questions?
When it's short, yes, sir.
No, well, you know. Wanted to give you the full.
You got a one-on-one. That's very understandable, by the way. Yeah, we broke that down. Yes.
Okay, let's move on to new business, discussing the fiscal year 2015 audited financial statements.
I didn't have a presentation on the financial statements. So you all received the financial statements, I think back in December or January when we got them from the auditors. I just wanted to make sure that if there were any questions about those, that you had an opportunity as a group to raise those questions.
No question. Resolution 1601, approval of online privacy policy and website payment refund policy.
So, you know, we are kind of finishing up the on-site review stuff. These are the last two policies that we need to add to have a full policy handbook or for HUD. And the last 6 months we've added, you know, probably 10 or 12 new policies or reviewed a bunch of policies. So all of our policies after we do these two are up to date. So this will kind of close out that portion of this.
So how did you do this privacy policy? I mean, is this something that do we do it with Jessica, or do we pull another policy and adjust it? I mean, it's just like I was curious how you.
So the privacy policy is only driven by the fact that we have an online payment portal. Otherwise, we really wouldn't need the privacy policy. and the bank actually provides us a privacy policy that is required or that meets the requirements of the payment processor. So they actually have given us that policy. We reviewed it. I did not have Jessica review. We just kind of read through it since it was something that came kind of from the bank anyway, and it was for a very specific banking purpose. We kind of took what they gave us. They've always been good to us.
Is
So.
the bank responsible for the privacy, like the firewalls and stuff like that, to keep all that information from getting hacked or whatever?
Yes and no. The payment processor has more responsibility to that, which is why they require a kind of a specific privacy policy. But it's not hosted on our website. So once you make that click, you're actually taken to the processor's website. So we don't have any access really to that information. So it's really on them to maintain its security.
And we feel good that that company, whoever's doing that, has everything in place that needs to be.
I do. We had a very, very lengthy conversation with the bank, with Karen Nelson at the bank, about the payment processor, their requirements, how we had to. There were things we had to do to meet their requirements, and then there's a lot of just kind of explanation as to who the company was. They're a preferred vendor of Visa, MasterCard, American Express, Discover. So I personally didn't have any concerns. I thought it was a pretty well thought out process, and it's something that. It's not just us doing it. There are tons of organizations locally or Old Tech and customers that use that payment processor.
Right.
And there's a whole section about California privacy protection. Is that because these guys are in California, or?
Yeah, they're nationwide. So.
Okay, so they have to have that little California clause.
The website privacy policy, or the refund policy. Sorry, the refund policy is actually fairly straightforward. We
One sentence.
Yeah, literally, yeah. We don't offer any refunds for those payments. Now, don't get me wrong. It's stated that way to just kind of avoid a lot of people coming to us and coming to the bank and creating a lot of confusion. If there's an issue and the bank gives us a file, we're going to review the file and correct anything that's wrong. But this avoids people coming to us saying, oh, the bank did this, and then we have to call the bank. And they went to the bank and said, oh, the housing authority did this. This way, they have an issue, they go to the bank then gives us a notification that there's a question about the file, and we can address it from there.
So that's okay if our policy says we give no refunds, and then we still give refunds?
Well, we don't give refunds. We would make an adjustment on the account.
Okay.
So we're literally, that's the problem. We don't want people thinking that we're actually going to give the money back. We'll put a credit on your account so that, in your next month's payment, you wouldn't owe any money, but we don't literally give refunds.
Okay.
Any other questions?
If no other questions, I'll entertain a motion.
I motion that we approve resolution 1601.
A second.
It's been motion second. Any other discussions? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Resolution 1602, approval of 2017 operating budget, which we just heard.
I'll make a motion we approve 1602.
Motion on the table.
Got a second.
Oh, second, sorry, I did it. The motion is second, any other discussions? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. I don't think, there's any need for us to go into executive session today. Nobody has anything, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn. So motion is second, and any other discussions? Being none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None?